Welcome, welcome, welcome. Bring it in, ladies and gentlemen. We're here with His Point, Her Point, Our Future, the podcast. And we're taking our guys and our girls and we're sitting down. We're talking about those topics that we have never been able to talk about before without the blow ups. We're coming to the table and we're bringing up those subjects and we're going to talk about them in order to change our future together. I'm Tony Parks, founder of Llama Vision, and I've got my co-host with me, and we're going to get into our hot topics. Come on and go with us. Let's talk about some stuff.
We gon' make it through if it takes us all night. No matter what the odds may bring our way, I can see the blessings coming our way. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Blessings on blessings, yeah. I can see the blessings.
Good evening and welcome to His Point, Her Point, Our Future. I'm Tony Parks, founder and president of Llama Vision. And His Point, Her Point is the division of Llama Vision where we come together and talk about topics that concern our community. So tonight I would like to welcome you, and if my co-hosts tonight will introduce themselves and then we'll move on.
Hi, I'm Jesse Walker. I want to give a shout out to Wedgewood Community Center for allowing us to be here today. Thank you.
What's up, everyone? This is Chris, the Black Business Ambassador from BantuCola.com. How y'all doing?
All right. We do have Chris with us tonight, who's a part of the family, and we're excited to have him with us. We want to send a shout out to our other co-host, Mac. We miss you, and we'll see you next week.
What's up, Mackie?
All right, so let's get started. Tonight we are going to touch on and talk about the critical race theory. It's a big topic in our country right now, and I found an article that I was reading a couple weeks ago, and I just thought it would be a great topic for us to cover. First and foremost, let me just hint on what critical race theory is. Basically, it is an academic concept about systemic racism. And what is happening at this point is that academically, we want to introduce the beginnings of racism all the way back to slavery into the academic program for our students around the country. And unfortunately, some of our Caucasian counterparts have a problem with that. And they're not very happy about the truth being told. So a whitewashed version of our history is what is trying to be put out to our children, whether they are in elementary school, high school, or they're in college. So what we're going to talk about tonight is just understanding how the history is trying to be portrayed, the whitewashing itself. And we're going to talk about this article I came across called The 1609 Project, The Republican-Approved History of America. So as we get started, I'm just going to go through a few points about this article. It was written by Michael Harriot, who is a contributing author for The Root. And for those of you that don't know about The Root is a news foundation that reports about us, on us, everything going on in our community. So Mr. Harriot decided, since there was going to be an influx of history books being created to go into the school systems, which means that the economic system surrounded around these books. He wanted to kind of do a little satire to get in on it as to what the history books themselves would say. So I'm just going to throw some points out in the article and give a little background on it, just a little bit. Okay. So what Michael is saying is that although news outlets, legislators, school boards, television stations, and even Marjorie Taylor Greene's contacts inside the QAnon industrial complex can't seem to find a single K-12 teacher who studied critical race theory and decided to teach it to social studies students. The anti-CRT movement is growing, and that's what we were talking about. And basically, he's saying you may think the recent Caucasian hysteria is part of the culture wars, but what if it isn't? What if Trump's 1776 project Texas's 1836 project, and the always present 1968 project, when white people started knowing what Martin Luther King would have wanted, are the beginnings of a new lucrative whitewashing industry that black people will once again miss out on. So Michael said he wasn't missing out on it, so he was going to write his own. And some of the points that he put in, he went back to 1609 and he called his project the 1609 Project. So he's saying in 1609, with the help of Jesus, Manifest, Destiny's Child, and a few ships, a diverse group of 104 white men and boys arrived in Jamestown, Virginia, as a part of a real estate development company called the Virginia Company of London. The entrepreneurs were greeted by Indians who were elated to share their land with the settlers. After a tense negotiation, the Indians decided that they didn't want to live on the land anyway. Instead, they complied with the First Virginia Charter's stated goal of propagating the Christian religion to such people as yet live in darkness and miserable ignorance of the true knowledge and worship of God, and may in time bring the infidels and savages living in those parts to human civility and to a settled and quiet government. 10 years later, a ship called the White Lion showed up with 20 and odd Negroes looking for work. Luckily, the colonists had a few job openings, so they gave the Africans entry-level minimum wage positions at $0 per hour, with the opportunity to double and triple their salaries. Because the British transplants believed in the value of hard work, they graciously allowed the Africans to do most of the work in the English colonies, even traveling to Africa to recruit more workers.
Michael.
Offering paid relocation expenses, free housing, and lifetime job security. The program was so successful that the subsequent colonies adopted the policies. Although this kind of work program had been tried around the world, this race-based, constitutionally enshrined, intergenerational, perpetual, chattel-based version that offered no means of escape was an American invention. Thus began this country's long history of innovative exceptionalism. So in 1662, the first of its kind, Negro Women's Children Act expanded employee benefits to include the children of these employees, while including America's first law on sexual harassment in the workplace.
Michael. What do you do with
Come
that
on,
right
guys.
There? What do you do with that right there?
Wow.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
So, really, our Republican counterparts would love to see this version in our textbooks to our children. Mind you, prior to 1776, our children never even were taught. We weren't taught about what was happening in this country or what started in 1619. Okay, so how do you guys feel about this? Talk to me.
All right. So first off, I'm going to say Pensacola in the house, and they really got to go back further than 1609 and go back to 1559 with Tristan de Luna hitting the Pensacola ports with his African workers, highly paid, highly skilled workers on the ship, right? But that's a different story for a different day. We'll leave, since we're going to start in 1609 with Jamestown. I mean, what can we say, right? That's dealing with CRT. Because, when you think about, the fact that we can't deal with the reality of this country and we'd rather paint a picture of a false reality to keep power, right, rather than deal with the truth. This is one thing we've never really done well in this country is deal with truth, because capitalism allows us to buy our way out of the truth so many times over. That's what I think about it.
Of course, that's exactly what it is. You gotta understand, back in 1909, it wasn't even, of course, it wasn't even written in 1909. Of course, we know it started in 1619. So in 1619, we coming over here, it was brutal, very brutal. And America haven't washed their way out of that shame yet. They still can't wash their way out of that shame.
Okay, so let's talk about critical race theory. First and foremost, let's say critical race theory is an academic discipline. And what they're doing with it is seeking to create an understanding of how racism shaped our U.S. laws and how those laws have continued to impact the lives of non-white people. Mm-hmm. Okay? And when you think about slavery, it was the backbone of every aspect of America. Our social laws, our economic laws, our justice system, all of it was built off of the backs of slavery itself. Yeah. So help me understand why it is that right now we have 6 different states passing legislation to block CRT from being in our school systems. Why hide the truth? Come on, guys. Come on. Why are we hiding the truth? Why are they hiding the truth?
Because reparations is coming. Reparations coming.
Exactly.
Reparations coming. Reparations coming.
Exactly. And they don't have the funds to pay.
They got the funds.
No. Man.
Bro, we just paid out how many in billions of dollars for COVID relief for every person in this nation, right? So to talk about we don't have the funds in this nation, they print money when they want to print money.
To make that money, to make the amount of money that needs to be paid for slavery, from slavery, and then all the atrocities that they've done to our people, is ridiculous. You can't even put a price on that.
Oh, of course not. I mean,
so I mean, and it's still relevant today. It's still working on us today. Mm-hmm. We haven't gotten through slavery yet today.
I think Ta-Nehisi Coates, when he wrote his piece a while back, and kind of bringing out the topic of reparations in general to deal with that, I think the numbers were somewhere around, I want to say it was 15 trillion. In order to pay back the African descendants of slavery, hashtag ADOS. Go to ADOS 101 and learn more. But to pay them back in actual monetary compensation for what's been done over so many times, and to deal with that CRT, right, or the boogeyman that they've made it out to be, rather than dealing with it in academics and let it flourish there, right, to figure out and flesh out the details, they rather turn it into a boogeyman.
Well, they did, and they got away with it on so many occasions. Like every president that come in office, the word reparation come out, and then what happened is it's a way that wash it off. They washed it away. When civil rights came through, then you had women rights coming in. Then you had going on and on through the Vietnam War, and then the next president come in. They talk about everything that has something to get away from reparation. And we can go on and on, because even when Obama got in office, it was more of gay rights, and that took away from reparations. And then when Trump got in, we had COVID. That took away from reparations. And
it wasn't gonna happen anyway when
and
Trump
now,
got in office.
Yeah. well, but the fact is, we slipped through and didn't allow us to do it when Obama was in office.
Yeah.
Okay. We let it slip. Then now that Biden's in office, you have everything else outside of us.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's move on down the timeline a little bit, okay? So Micah says that then came founding fathers like George Washington, since we're talking about presidents, who inspired men to tear down statues of oppressors. When he was 11 years old, Washington inherited 10 slaves, but decided he loved cutting down cherry trees all by himself. So, James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and Benjamin Franklin all used violence or the threat of violence to extract free labor from captive Africans, unlike Thomas Jefferson, by the way. Jefferson was a brilliant man who hated the institution of slavery so much that he enslaved 600 black people in his lifetime. At the age of 10, 11, or 12, the young black boys on his plantation were whipped to prepare them to work at his nail factory. His love for black people was so deep that he fathered 6 children with Sally Hemings, a woman he held prisoner on his Monticello forced labor camp. Although rape is the legal definition for this act of having sex with 15-year-olds who are not able to consent, Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence, so it doesn't count.
I mean, you know.
Okay. So our founding fathers sat at a table, signed the Declaration of Independence, supposedly freeing slaves, while all the while they had a slave waiting in the wing to serve them as soon as they left out of there, and had children on the side, mixed children.
Mm-hmm. These Christian founding fathers.
These Christian founding fathers.
God-loving, God-fearing.
As you bring that up, though, let's talk about it. Let's switch a little bit, because when the incident happened, well, let's talk about some of the Caucasian Christian leaders in the country right now, because they're some of the biggest Republicans. They're also some of the biggest opposers of CRT.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is the truth. We're supposed to love one another. Okay? Please tell me what you guys think that CRT, the effect it would have on the pockets that are lined in the Christian community by our big Caucasian ministers and pastors. How would CRT affect them? We're talking about academics going into school. We're talking about teaching academics in school. Why are they such big pushers and opposers to CRT?
I'll let you start first.
Man,
What do they have to lose?
they don't have anything to lose.
Oh, yeah, they do.
No, they don't.
Yeah, they do.
Oh yeah, what's that?
They have parishioners to lose. They have income to lose. Because predatory capitalism affects the church just as much as it does the world. And you have a lot of pastors who have big pulpits, but they are afraid of losing membership. And they would rather serve money rather than God in a lot of cases. And they allow people in their churches to actually influence based on their Republican values, whether or not they are redeemed of the Lord or not, right? They push a narrative, and then if you start talking outside of that narrative, you either get pushed out of your pulpit or you lose your flock.
That's back to what we said before. How the churches are into the 501c.
It's not even that.
Well, they are, because it's,
it is.
it's government control. When it's government control, there we go. Back to where we started from.
But see, it's not even the government at that point that they're scared of. They're scared of money. They're scared of losing money. And it's the predatory capitalism that exists within the sinful hearts of people, right? And it's like, I'm going to control you by your money. And if you start talking that talk, then I'm going to withhold my money, or I'm going to leave, and my family's going to leave. And as people start rolling out, then everything you have starts to drop.
The root to all evil.
The root.
So
Well-
it's all about, if I don't understand,
Money.
all about the money.
It's all about the money.
It's all about the money. It's all about the economical system that really has empowered more Caucasians than anything. And when you think about that, economically, we already know that in the Black community, it's very difficult for a Black business owner to walk into a bank and obtain a loan at the same interest rate. May have the same credit score, but may get a different interest rate just because of the color of their skin.
Redlining.
Okay? Exactly. But doesn't this go back to slave days when the whole point was, back then, Blacks had absolutely no rights. They were not supposed to have anything. They could not own anything. And we still have the same incidents happening today where economically Blacks are challenged to not own anything, to not have anything. So if we empower them by teaching CRT in the school systems, we start teaching our children from a young age, well, this is what happened. This is what history says. And in order for you to have something, you have to understand that you're going to have to work 2, 3, 4 times harder than that Caucasian child sitting next to you. Okay? How does that position us economically? How does that position our children coming up economically? To have that information from a young age.
So I would start off first. I gotta say it's the love of money that is the root of all evil, not just
Correct.
money. I just wanted to put that out there before someone catch me on the side and actually throw a brick at me for not making sure I say the correct verse. Associate. It's the love of money.
Yeah.
Right. But I think so. How deep should kids be inundated with CRT? Is going to be right. It's a job for academics to decide what gets taught at elementary and middle and high school, right? And the older you are, the more you can handle in knowledge. But I think starting with the truth, right, is the reality that, you know, we have to deal with in elementary. We start with facts, and if we can just lay down facts, right, that causes kids to have to learn and to think, right? We don't teach kids to be thinkers. We teach kids to be consumers. Right, and if we teach kids to be thinkers and think about the realities, right, when you go out to a playground, most kids, right, unless they've been taught otherwise, will typically play with each other regardless of whether they're white, black, purple, orange, right? You're a kid, we're going to play kickball, right, dress up, whatever. You're just going to do what you do, right, because you're having fun. But it's when you get inundated with doctrine that is inherently sinful, right, which is when you go off into more discriminatory ways and practices and it gets ingrained. But if they're taught to think from a very early age about what equality looks like, I think it empowers them to feel more equal rather than lesser by default, right? That we have to deal with in the hood. It's like positioning, right? That we are all equal. And I know we do a good job of teaching our kids that, most of us do or try to, right? They put on their pants just like you, one leg at a time. They do what they do one leg at a time, right? Whoever they is, right? That can be anybody, right? There's people outside your community as well as people inside your community, right? That person ain't no better than you, right? What you got to do is what you got to do to survive. And the more our kids understand that, and the more other kids who are outside our community understand the inequalities of how people start out in this country, even though there's chance for a lot of people to grow, the better off we'll be.
Yeah, when you think it started at home, though?
Oh, of course. Of course, it has to start at home, but we deal, because we are in a society where sin can run rampant wherever. But regardless of sin, right, or as sin takes its hold, it takes its hold in predatory capitalism, right? Cream rules everything that happens in this country. And so as that shows up in its lust and power and how laws and rules are laid out, it's been that way since day one, right? So you might not be able to change a person who is a bigot because they've been a bigot for a long time, right? Whatever that is, right? Or someone who is discriminatory, right? We all have discrimination, right? We all have prejudices. It's just a matter of how it affects other people. So when you have power, right? When you have discriminatory power, because all of the jobs are run by, right, people who think like you or culturally do things like you, then that is where racism comes in, because that's when there's a power differential, right?
Okay, so let's move a little deeper into this history book. So, after the Civil War, fraternities like the Circle of Brothers emerged in the South. To be more authentic, they adopted Greek names like Ku Klux for circle and Klan for brothers. The Ku Klux Klan was known for their surprise parties on Black people's laws and their fight for justice in the South. This era was known for its political activism, prompting a rash of violence against newly freed slaves who just happened to be not white. This period ended with the Compromise of 1877, when a diverse group of 15 men who just happened to all share the same ethnicity, American, agreed to make Rutherford B. Hayes the president in exchange for the South's ability to enact Jim Crow laws that helped African Americans know their place. Okay, guys. So
There was no oppressor.
Oppressor, what's that?
Oh, really? Ah, man. So we just really whitewashed this completely out.
I mean, we're just stumbling over ourselves. I mean, according to the article, I mean, we just need to pick up the ball and just do what we need to do. Pick ourselves up by our bootstraps, right? Isn't that what everyone's been saying the whole time?
But we're not coming out in droves on this issue, though. I'm talking teachers, I'm talking principals, I'm talking doctors, lawyers. We're not coming out in droves on this issue, period. Why is that?
I don't know.
but let's talk about this point in the history books though, and the development of the Ku Klux Klan, the effect the Ku Klux Klan had on my grandparents, your grandparents, and the way that the violence that they functioned in this country, the fear that they put in blacks in this country, the fact that they are still active today.
Yeah.
Okay? They've not gone anywhere. So teaching our children about the Ku Klux Klan and their surprise parties on the lawns of blacks and their love of nooses and things like that. Speaking of which, I'm going to hit on this other point and then we're going to talk about that. Because so many people in the South learned how to tie nooses. Many black people left the South to find non-noose related jobs. This was called the Great Migration. Following World War I, when Americans defeated the Nazis, the pro-noose trend invaded northern cities, resulting in the Red Summer of 1919, when race riots broke out between noose-reluctant African Americans and pro-lynching patriots who objected to microaggressions like black people wearing military uniforms, looking real Americans in the eye, or existing, period, in the world. They also killed Asian people for working jobs that no one else wanted. So if we start talking about teaching our children about this type of history, what effect emotionally is it going to have on them? What are we talking about? Are we creating angry little beings? What are we going? Well, how is this going to come across to our young people? How are they going to take this when Sally is their best friend, but Sally looks like the same people we're talking about, the noose lovers we're talking about in this article?
Good question. I think I think Lakeisha and Derek already know this for the most part, honestly, right? African American kids know and understand a lot of this. I don't think they know all of their history like they should, but I think they lived through enough of it and traumatized enough from it that they understand a lot. As we move further and further away, generations away from the Civil Rights era and the Jim Crow era, right, less of that history gets passed off. But I think more than anything else, it's everyone else who needs to really understand that history, because a lot of people act like it never existed or it was never that bad, or it's why are you still complaining, right? And it's like literally so I had a friend of mine, talk to me about this, about it really wasn't that bad, and literally I'm like, dude, do you not understand? When I was in high school, my mom, when she would take me to the Sanger Theater when I was in all-county band, she would say, Chris, do you see the firewall stairwell down the side of the Sanger? This is the old version of the Sanger. So if you go look online here locally in Pensacola, you'll see this, the older version of the Sanger right before they expanded it out. But you see the fire escape down the side of the Sanger. She was like, you see that fire escape? We used to have to go in the side door to buy our tickets and then walk back out and walk upstairs because we couldn't walk in the front door with everyone else. We couldn't sit where everyone else was sitting. We were only reserved to go up to the balcony. This is my mom, right? My mom was literally one of the first 2 or 3 classes that integrated Pensacola High School, right? So this isn't like sometime a long time ago. This is like my mom, literally, right? So it's fresh for me, right? I didn't live through what they lived through, and they raised me to be fairly independent without worrying about that kind of stuff. But as time went on, I continued to see stuff happen in my life, right, relating to that time period and the ignorance that still progresses now. So I think if we learn about this, if other people learn about this, then it helps to equalize how we see each other as Americans and truly get to a point of being all American and one team and one family. Until then, we don't have, a single America.
Jesse, what are your thoughts on our young people and maybe how they may react to this history from, are we creating an angry scenario? Are we creating division between our children and their Caucasian counterparts?
I think we should. I think we should have a division because it has always been. America is about division. It's always been about division. We divide in religion. We divide in. Let's just say that the time that we just separate from each other, the biggest day is Sunday. Why is that? We are separate, period. We always have been. The only thing is that we, as in black people, are the only ones that's tried to make things work. Nobody else have. We crossed into the point where we married more whites than any other group. We marry outside our race than any other group. We do this more than any other group. We intervene in all their sports. We intervene in this and that. We sat in just to sit down with them at lunch tables back in the 60s and got bust upside the head. We was forcing ourselves to be a part of America. And if that's the America that we're talking about, we shouldn't be trying to get involved with America. We should be separate. Period. That's how I feel about it. I think we should be separate.
I think that's almost impossible at this point.
But I'm just saying.
So
we talk about these sheets that these Ku Klux Klan, they can't walk through our neighborhoods like that no more. All that won't happen.
From a reality perspective, it is impossible at this point to be separated and for us to be segregated at this point.
But don't think we're not going that route. Don't think this America's not trying to go that route.
I'm not saying that is not a preference for many Caucasians. I'm not saying it's not a preference, but what I am saying is, although it's a preference, it's not a task that can be easily implemented.
But what have we gained?
That's what I'm saying.
What have we gained? We still less than 1% of ownership of economics in America. We haven't moved an inch. When we were separate, we did have grocery stores. We had clothing stores. We made our own clothes. We had everything. We had gardens that we sold out of. We had this and that. We had something back then. So right now, we don't have nothing.
Well, according to this article, in 2008, we got quite a bit. So in 2008, Americans finally ended racism by electing a black president, Barack Obama. He was decent. 8 years later, Russia's elected Donald Trump because he was going to build a wall. He did not build a wall. Then the Black Lives Matter movement started alongside the All Lives Matter movement. Black Lives Matter wanted to defund the police and replace them with socialized medicine. All Lives Matter wanted an end to Black Lives Matter, and Blue Lives Matter wanted Smurfette to stop being such a tease. So, who's to say that according to the whitewashed version of history, we have not arrived? We've had a black president. We have a black vice president.
Was he elected or selected? Question.
I think that's a great question, and asking that question, being a political science major, I learned so much about our political system and how, in reality, our presidents that sit in office have no control. They have no control. They're being controlled from the background. Okay? So, understanding that, I think that it was wonderful for us to have the representation of a black president. Do I believe that it was impactful enough to have changed America in and of itself? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You have to understand, and our people have to understand that our votes count to an extent. Okay? Even in Pensacola, even in Escambia County, do you know how easy it is for the political lines to be readjusted during an election season? So you can have a precinct in this area, a precinct in that area, but if the numbers aren't looking good to a particular party, they have the power to go in and really redistrict the precincts.
That's
And
interesting.
rezone the
No,
precincts.
they have done it in Pensacola several times.
Well, I know precincts can move, and for sure. Well, and even right now, we're in the middle of the census, right? So we just completed a census season.
Right.
So we're going to be redoing the districts the way that things are laid out.
Exactly.
At the state level, at the county level, at the city level, right, and at the national level, right? Because Florida actually inherited, I think, one additional seat this time in the past census.
Right.
Florida inherited one. I think Texas inherited 2 seats.
Large red box.
So I would actually differ a little bit, and I would say that the boxes are going to get a little smaller because there's denser population, but it depends on where that population growth is. Either way, we're in an area, right, where the Panhandle is primarily controlled, by the Republican Party, right, almost throughout the whole Panhandle from Pensacola almost to Tallahassee, right. Now, once you get, there are groups, shout out to Black Voters Matter, that are making inroads and actually helping to get people out to vote, register to vote, and help people understand why they should be voting and why things should change and challenging the system.
They're not challenging the system.
Even with
Oh, they're
that,
challenging the system.
It's not by
Well,
vote.
are they? Because now there are laws that in legislation before us that's trying to change voting rights in order to block what Black Lives Matter is doing.
Right. Now, I agree. So that means Black Voters Matter, the group I'm talking about specifically is Black Voters Matter, is making a dent in scaring people. It's why DeSantis is probably doing some of the things that he's doing. I mean, I call him Baby Trump anyway. But that's why things are happening, because they're trying to control the browning of America,
Exactly.
right? And you control that by restricting power and access to the vote.
But that's funny you say that, because when I was in school in 1985, I was told that by 2025, the complexion of America would be totally different. It would be brown, black and brown.
Mm-hmm.
Majority.
Well, I don't know if it's 2025.
That's what I was told back in 85.
Maybe you were told that.
Yeah, I was told that back in 85. And 2025 is right around the corner.
Well, I think it's closer to, is it 35, I think?
They keep moving it back.
I think it's 35.
Yeah, they keep moving it back. Why?
But I think right now, I mean, the latest actually
we
is
have
that-
numbers. We have numbers.
We have
that
numbers.
makes a big, huge difference.
I mean, we're not the majority minority. But now this is the first
I
time
can't say
that
I can't say
Europeans
that.
are no longer the majority ethnic group in America
Have you
anymore.
seen
This is
baby
the first
rate
year.
of Caucasians.
It's going down.
Yeah.
But it's going to be replaced by Latins, by Latinx, right? That's what it's going to be.
That's what they say.
We're the
Is
second,
that what they say,
We're
right?
no longer the
Look,
second.
when I
We're
was-
no longer
when I was
the major
born,
minority
when I was
in this
born,
nation.
we was at 12.2% population in America. Today we're at 12.9. Are you for real? Are we gonna continue to believe this narrative? We're gonna believe that.
I believe it.
Man, I can't believe that. I can't believe it.
I believe it.
Economic power, we have it. That's what we're not showing the power of our dollar.
But that's where we're weak at.
That's
where we are weak at.
We're weak because we keep buying into another system. We're not putting our money back into where it needs to be in our own neighborhoods.
I agree.
And not just only that, we're not even showing that we have the money to make a difference and a change. If we protest one business at a time, one big corporation at a time, and show where the black dollar is very valuable, trust me, they'll pay attention to us on the political field. But right now, they don't pay attention to us.
I even disagree with you there, simply because it's not about protesting one business over a short period of time. You may win a battle, but you won't win a war in that regard, right? In all actuality, what needs to happen? Yeah, but it's not about being outward. If you look at every other minority group in this country, right, they have two things that are going for them, right? So if you just look at this sphere, right, number one, they have a language that is not English or not a colonial language, except for Hispanics, right? So the Latin community, they speak Spanish. It's a European language, but they have their own thing. It is not English, right? The language in this country is English, right? The colonial language that's in this country is English. They speak Spanish. Most Americans don't speak Spanish. You had a little bit of it in high school, que pasa, hola, right? And that's all you remember. That's it, right? You're gone. I spoke French, so bonjour, je m'appelle qui si fa, right? And I can't go much beyond that, right? Qu'est-ce que parle français? That's it. I'm done, right? 2 years of French. But with that being said, the other minority groups, whether they're Asian or Latin, can all have conversations in public, plot, plan, do whatever they want to do, and no one is the wiser. We're the only minority group that's in this country that only speaks a colonial language, number one. So we can't have conversations in public. This conversation right now in public is in English. You know why? Because we don't know how to speak Swahili, right? We don't know how to speak, Twi or some other language, right? So we can have a conversation in public without everybody being in our business, number one. Number two, every other minority group in this country practices group economics to a high degree. They practice in their communities,
right,
and they keep money in their communities,
right.
Now, if we had those two things, political power, all of our bets, we hedged everything on political access to give us equality politically, but that doesn't give us power economically, which is where we are the weakest at, and that's what we need. And without that, we will always suffer and be second because we are depending on other people to provide us jobs, give us gifts, provide supplies, because we cannot fend for our own community.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. You gotta understand.
Let me say this though. I agree with Chris at 100%. As of last year, 41% of Americans Black Americans were in a position to be, if they had an emergency come up that cost them $1,000, only 41% of Black Americans were in a position to be able to pay that $1,000 without having to put it on a credit card, without having to take out a loan or borrow it from someone else. 41%.
I believe that. Get your emergency
We got
fund.
some issues.
We got some issues.
You're talking about $1,000.
We got issues.
Our community really are the biggest financial contributors to the big name brands, Nike, Apple, all of these companies.
That's right. Exactly.
Are the kids running around with $200, $300, $400 shoes?
Mercedes-Benz. That's right. We buy Mercedes-Benz twice as anybody else. We want to spend all the money. We're the trend setters. We do that.
Yeah, I believe that.
And so we put the money out there.
Yeah.
But we don't put it back in here.
Exactly. And
So,
we've got to get to a place where economically, if we shift economically, then I think that at that point, we begin to rewrite history.
Exactly.
right.
That's when we rewrite history. Because, and on top of shifting economically, that takes an entirely whole new mindset to do. And you're literally talking about going back to the mindset of slave days where we weren't allowed to have anything, uprooting that because it's come through the generations. It's been a generational impact economically and socially. So until we go back and we change that mindset and we break that generational transfer, I don't care how much money you give people. Yeah. It's not gonna matter. Just like all the influx of all this stimulus money.
Yeah, what you done with that stimulus money?
How many people have any of that left?
They went and bought rims. Oh, they did.
They still buy rims now?
They buy rims now, man.
They still buy rims?
Bling, bling,
Please
man.
don't tell me spinners are still a thing.
Bling, man. Bling,
Please
bling.
don't tell me spinners are still a thing.
It's still out there. It's still a thing, man.
Bro, no,
Look around.
please.
All right, guys, we're going. Okay, I got one more point in our makeshift history book, and then we're gonna close this out for tonight. In 2020, a virus that no one could have seen coming hit America, sickening and killing hundreds of thousands of Americans. Scientists proposed that masks would alleviate the pandemic, while people on Facebook disagreed. A police officer kneeled on George Floyd's neck, killing him. The country erupted into protests, which was solved with a combination of tweets from major corporations and police officers firing beanbags into protesters' eye sockets. A few months later, Joseph R. Biden was elected president. That brings us to today. So what happens from here?
Not a thing, because you see what just happened over there overseas, what they did to Haitians. The Haitis, man, they was crossing over to Cuba. Am I correct? Where were they going?
They were coming from Mexico. So the Haitians were coming through Mexico because they had a lot of them moved into South America during in Rio, but there were a lot of Haitians in Central and South America. Okay. They were making their way up.
But did you see the man with the horse
and the
whips?
Bro,
I didn't know whips was still out there, bro.
Whips and chains.
I didn't know whips was still out there.
But we still out there with whips and chains.
But see, if you don't know your past, if you don't know your past, you're about to repeat it. I'm telling you.
Literally.
This is in our face.
Figuratively.
But see, it's in our face right now. And as black people in America, and they see how shameful it is, and even white people see how shameful it is, and now they want to speak out about it. But the atrocities happened back then on us, and you didn't say nothing about it. And you're not doing anything about it. And see, that's when we need to live up right now on just that topic right there, what just happened. I mean, I don't see preachers saying anything about it. I don't see nobody running up and making arms, mass protests about what just happened. Not one.
Oh, what's happening?
Well, it's silent.
Yeah, I think it depends on what circles you're in. It's not. It's definitely not across the board as a big. But you know about it, and I know about it, and we're both fussing about it.
Right.
It's happening. My pastor knows about it. We had a great conversation about it the other day. Right. Black Voters Matter is aware of it and know about it because Florida has the largest Haitian community in the United States.
But we still deporting them, big time.
And we're all of a sudden
large numbers.
The Democrat in charge, who was supposed to make everything normal, right, and bring back some sensibility, and then understanding that we should be loving on people, all of a sudden Haitians don't seem that lovable, and they need to go away. Right? I don't understand that, but I don't believe Democrats are the answer. Republicans aren't the answer.
I don't either. I agree with that.
Whether Trump is in office or Biden is in office, what am I working on? Like Pinky in the Brain, building black business, because that's the only way we build our community, save our community, and grow forward into the future.
All right.
We gotta have llama vision.
Okay, that's our show for tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. We are not done with this topic. There are so many different aspects to what we're discussing right now, even getting into the Republican Democratic parties and, you know, how they're separated, how they're different. My question is, are they really? Are they really? So we're going to get to that. But thank you for joining us on His Point, Her Point. Until next time, peace. We love you. See you later.
Peace. Audi 5000 G.
Thank you all so much for joining us on His Point, Her Point, Our Future, where we're having the conversations that are changing the trajectory of our community. Why don't you hit us up? We want to hear from you. You can reach us on our YouTube channel, Facebook, or Instagram. Just search for Llama Vision. We want to hear from you, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next show. From His Point, Her Point, Our Future, come on, let's talk about it.
I know that we all gonna be alright. We gon' make it through if it takes no matter what the odds may